The sharp crack of a gunshot shattered the dusk's fragile peace, echoing across John Parker's Texas ranch as he bolted upright from his porch chair, coffee spilling over his boots. His heart slammed against his ribs, the sound ripping through the stillness like a memory of war. Vietnam's jungles flashing in his mind, the sting of gunpowder in his nose. He grabbed his rifle from the rail, its weight steadying his trembling hands, the burn on his forearm pulsing from weeks of strain. The shot came from the lake, a single, deliberate blast, and out here on his 200-acre spread, it wasn't a hunter or a stray round. Someone was sending a message, and John wasn't about to wait for it to find him. He stormed to the barn, the sky bleeding red over the water, and saddled Dusty, the chestnut mare's ears pinned back as he mounted. The fight for his land had taken a darker turn, and he'd meet it head-on. The air was thick with the scent of wet grass and pine as he rode hard, the lake's surface rippling under the dying light, its edges swollen from the storm days past. He reined Dusty in at the shore, dismounting with a thud, his boots sinking into the muddy bank. The gunshots' echo lingered, a ghost in the trees, and he scanned the horizon, rifle raised, his brown eyes sharp under the brim of his Stetson. Tracks scored the dirt, boot prints, fresh and deep, trailing into the brush, and beside them, a spent shell casing glinted, its brass catching the sun's last rays. He knelt, picking it up, rolling it between his fingers, the weight of it cold and familiar. A .308, hunting round, but no game lay dead. His jaw clenched, rage simmering beneath his exhaustion. This was a warning, and he'd bet his ranch it came from Caleb Wheeler's hand. A rustle in the trees yanked his attention left. He swung the rifle up, squinting into the shadows, and caught a flicker, movement quick and low. "Show yourself," he roared, voice cutting through the dusk, his finger hovering over the trigger. A figure stumbled out, hands raised. Tom Carter, Mary Ellen's son, his broad frame tense, a rifle of his own slung across his back. His face was pale, sweat beading on his brow, his eyes wide with something John couldn't place, fear, maybe, or guilt. "John, it's me," Tom called, his voice shaky but firm. "Heard the shot. Came running from Ma's place. You okay?" John lowered the rifle, suspicion coiling tight in his gut. "I'm Fine. You see who fired?" Tom shook his head, stepping closer, his boots crunching gravel. "No, heard it from the ridge. Thought it was you in trouble. Found this, though." He pulled a cigarette, but from his pocket, its paper-stained yellow, Caleb's brand, unmistakable. John's eyes narrowed, taking it, the pieces snapping into place. "Wheeler's punk. He's pushing. Harder now." He glanced at Tom, the kid's jittery stance setting off alarms. "You sure you didn't see nothing?" Tom's jaw tightened, his gaze flicking to the lake. "Swear it, John. I'd tell you." John nodded slow, unease gnawing at him, and they rode back together, the dusk deepening to night. The lake a dark mirror under a waxing moon. At the house, he tethered Dusty, Tom lingering by the barn, his silhouette tense against the lantern light spilling from the porch. John stepped inside, the shell casing heavy in his pocket, and poured coffee, the bitter brew steadying his hands. Frank Hensley sat at the table, his gray hair glinting, cleaning a pistol with the precision of a soldier who'd seen too much. He'd stayed since last night, a ghost from Vietnam turned ally, his presence a quiet anchor. "Shot by the lake," John said, setting the casing down. "Caleb's mark?" Tom found it. Frank's hand stilled, his eyes lifting, sharp and knowing. "Tom, huh? Kid's jumpy. Saw him riding in yesterday. Looked like he'd seen a ghost." John's chest tightened, doubt creeping in. "Says he heard it. Came to help. I want to trust him. Mary Ellen's boy." Frank leaned back, his voice low. "Trust a risk, Parker. Nam taught us that. Eddie trusted the wrong scout. Cost us half the squad. Watch him." The words hung heavy, the past a shadow over the present, and John nodded, sipping slow. Dawn broke gray, the air cool, when Mary Ellen arrived, her gray mare kicking dust, a basket of cornbread in hand. She climbed the porch, her braids swinging, her face softening at Frank, then tightening as John told her, shot, casing Tom's story. "He's a good kid," she said, pouring coffee, her voice firm but edged with worry. "Been sober since the storm, wouldn't lie to you." John met her gaze, the trust between them a lifeline. "Hope you're right. Wheeler's a skeleton. This ain't just fences now." She squeezed his arm, warm and steady. "We'll figure it out. You, me, Frank, Tom, too." Midday sun blazed as they rode out. John, Frank, Mary Ellen, scouting the lake, the shell casing a cold weight in John's pocket. Tom joined them, his bay gelding restless, his hands fidgeting with the reins. They combed the brush, finding more tracks, boot prints circling the shore, a second casing half buried in mud. "Caleb's been busy," Frank muttered, kneeling to study them, his soldiers' eye tracing the path. John glanced at Tom, the kid's silence loud in the rustling trees. "You ride this way often?" he asked, voice casual but probing. Tom shrugged, too quick. "Sometimes, checking Ma's fence. Nothing odd till today." Frank's gaze flicked to John, a silent warning, but they pressed on, the lake's edge a battlefield of clues. Dusk fell, the skies streaking orange, when Jake's truck rolled up, Sarah and Matt climbing out, faces grim, a thick envelope in Sarah's hand. John met them by the barn, rifle slung over his shoulder, the tension thick as the evening air. "Found it," Sarah said, handing him the envelope. Old papers, creased and faded. "Divorce decree, full copy. Mom's files had it buried. Property splits clear. Ranch is yours, no joint claim." Matt nodded, his voice steady. "Wheeler's lawyer faked the sale, forged our names. Hearing's in 3 days, we've got proof now." Jake's eyes burned, his fists clenched. "We didn't betray you, Dad. Swear it." John's chest eased, relief washing over the doubt, and he clapped Jake's shoulder, a rare gesture. "Believe you. This ends at legal side, at least." Sarah glanced at the lake. "Wheeler won't stop. That shot means he's desperate." Night deepened, the group gathered in the kitchen. John, Frank, Mary Ellen, the kids. Tom, planning over coffee and cornbread. "Fence held last night," John said, spreading a map. "But this shot's a step up. Need eyes on the lake." Frank leaned in, his pistol gleaming. "Set a trap. Watch from the ridge. Catch him cold." They agreed, splitting shifts, Jake and Matt at dawn, Frank and Tom at midnight, John and Mary Ellen at dusk. John rode out at 6 p.m., Mary Ellen beside him, the lake glowing under a setting sun. They hid in the brush, rifles ready, the silence heavy with anticipation. Hours passed, stars blinking on, when a rustle broke the quiet, boots crunching, a flashlight beam slicing the dark. John signaled Mary Ellen, creeping closer, and saw him, Caleb Wheeler, rifle in hand, a can of gasoline swinging from his belt. He knelt by the shore, splashing fuel on a pile of brush, a match flaring in his fingers. "Now!" John roared, lunging from the shadows, rifle raised. Caleb spun, dropping the match, the flame catching as John tackled him, pinning him in the mud. Mary Ellen stomped the fire out, smoke curling, as Caleb thrashed, cursing. "Get off me, old man. You're done." John pressed the barrel to his chest, voice steel. "Not yet. Who's pulling your strings?" Caleb smirked, breathless. "Figure out. Ain't just Wheeler." Headlights flared, Frank and Tom riding up, Jake's truck behind. They dragged Caleb to his feet, tying his hands with rope from Dusty's saddlebag. "Caught him red-handed," Frank said, kicking the gasoline can. "Arson, cops'll love this." Tom stayed silent, his eyes darting, and John watched him, doubt gnawing deeper. Dawn broke as they handed Caleb to the sheriff. The lake calm, but scarred. Back at the house, John sat with Mary Ellen, Frank, and the kids, the decree a shield against Wheeler's lie, Caleb's arrest a win, but Tom's unease lingered. "Trust's a price," Frank muttered, cleaning his pistol. "Paid it before, paying it now." John nodded, the rifle across his lap, the lake a dark promise outside. Caleb was down, the deed secure. But Wheeler's shadow loomed, and Tom's silence whispered betrayal. Across the water, a figure watched, binoculars glinting, then vanished. John gripped his mug, ready for the next blow.